Okay. So marketing lessons from movies. So this is kind of looking at the movies versus video games and trying to figure out sort of what the movies have done, what the movie industry is kind of like, and how I can figure out and learn from the movies. So for the movie industry, they've been around a lot longer than video games have. So they have a lot of success that the video game doesn't have necessarily. However, they're one of the most mainstream media industries that is the most similar to video games. So there is a lot that we can learn here. So high concept for films or a high concept film is essentially just an equation for success that the movie industry has developed over the last 100 years of movie making, essentially. And it essentially says that there's a lot of stuff that you need to have in a movie for it to be ultra successful. And that's essentially what it is. So the Marvel movies are essentially a high concept film. You've got your action and you've got your sad moments and you've got your character development and there's just this one formula. If you notice when you watch movies, there's like certain beats and certain things that every movie really just has. And the movies that are successful all really have those, high concept, major, big things. They've got that big action moment. They've got that one big love story. They start a certain way and they end a certain way. And so that's really where that equation for success comes in. Major movie companies also have this concept of the 622. And so what that means is they're going to create 6 movies, 2 movies, and another 2 movies. So 10 movies altogether in a year. And they expect that only 2 of those will actually be a major success. They expect 6 of them to flop, essentially. But what that does for them is that really allows them to focus on putting all of their money behind 2 major high concept films in a year, and understand that 6 they're probably going to lose some money on. 2 of them they're going to get some, probably break even on. But those 2 movies that ultimately become box office hits will really make that revenue back for them. And so it's a way that companies can guarantee at least 1 success per year and make their money back. The big one that I really think is huge in the movie industry, and that we can all notice, we've all gotten kind of frustrated with, I think, at some point or another, is product placement. And so this is where the majority of money is product placement and sponsorship that the movie industry, that's where their revenue is coming in. And so, you see, Pepsi, Coke, Dunkin' Donuts, God, what other brands are in movies all the time? Whatever, T-Mobile, right? Everything, every product, every brand that you see in a movie, that movie company is getting paid for the advertising that they're having in that movie from that company. And so, you want to talk about money makers, look at an Adam Sandler film and go through and watch the amount of brand names that you see, because that'll tell you a lot about how movies are making some money. Animation. This is what we call the Disney method. If you look at Finding Nemo, and some of the Finding Nemo movies, specifically the most recent one, you'll notice that some of their merchandise came out really early. A lot of these movies have merchandising deals and come up with some of the characters really, really early on. And they start trying to figure out how we can appeal to consumers before we ever really get to figuring out what the movie is going to be. And so what they really like to do is, well, how can we sell this product? And so they don't actually develop a storyline until they know what the product is going to end up being, and they know what the IP tie-ins are going to be. So Avatar Land and Pixar Land at Disney right now. Those are some kind of big examples. They clearly came after the movies were made. However, those are the types of things that you're looking at when you're looking at tie-ins here, right? So did Disney know 100% that they were going to be creating a Pixar Land when they were doing Toy Story and all that sort of Buzz Lightyear stuff? Not necessarily. However, did they think about it? Did they think, well, maybe we could have rides for this stuff in the future? Of course they did, So That's the stuff, that you really want to be thinking about, is how can we tie in other external merchandising here. Theaters are a big one. Theaters are still very, very much alive. Let's look at Marvel. We just had box office breaking numbers for Endgame. Ticket pre-sales for that were through the roof. They were sky high. They have been for the last several major box office hits. The wanna see is one of the most important things when it comes to marketing. Marvel is huge about this. Like, that's clearly every Avengers and Marvel movie that's come out in the last few years, everybody's talking about it. Everybody has to go see it. And it's the event of the year is going to see that Marvel film, and so everybody goes to theater, everybody sees it so many times because they feel like they missed something. You have to stay for that after credit scene, and so that's that want to see. That's really getting people out to the theaters and getting that hype and that buzz around it. The Oscars. This is really the biggest exposure event for movies, the movie industry altogether. So this is where you figure out who are the big players in the movie industry. This is where you figure out the names of people. You get to know who are the indies, right? Who are the big directors, right? Who's the new upcoming name? And, some of those movies that never would have gotten press, you'd never hear of. Some of those really indie films, or some of those actors and actresses, or lesser known directors, stuff like that, they'll all get noticed. And so people that, never would have heard of any of this, never would have sought any of this out, they suddenly know. They're suddenly able to see some of the genius works that have come out of the industry that year. It's also a great opportunity because there's a deadline for the Oscars, so a lot of movies will come out at a specific time of the year to meet that deadline, and so that creates what's known as Oscars buzz. And so it's a time of year when all of these movies are coming out, and everybody is like, oh, what movie's going to win the Oscar, and so there's Oscar season, right? And so, you have that buzz around that time of year. You can market and say, oh, this is going to be a huge Oscars film. Everybody come out, see this film because it's getting Oscars buzz. And so you think it's going to win an award, and so everybody wants to go see the film that could potentially be the major award winner for that year. Ease of access is another big one that's just changed the movie industry lately. Netflix, right? Hulu, streaming platforms, your phone, the ability to do everything on the go. Planes, this was a big one pretty recently, where a lot of plane companies decided to pull the back, the TV monitors right off the back headrests of the seats. And so then, I can't remember what company it was right off the top of my head. I feel like it was Delta, brought back the TVs on the headrests. And it was like this huge revolutionary move because it was like, well, everybody is going against this. And everybody's doing away with it because it's a huge, money drain. Nobody's really using this, and they're just taking up space. And suddenly, this other company comes out, and they're like, no, we're gonna have them there. We're gonna make sure that people have better access to movies. We're gonna put more movies and more TV shows on these devices, make them free, give people more access to what they want. And so that was a really revolutionary move for this company and gave them a lot of great press and really gained people. They gained a lot more customers with that. And so that's another major ease of access. If you're on a 3-hour flight in your phone instead, suddenly you have access to movies you maybe not watched before. And so the only real negative that we have for this, we've got two, but the major one is you got piracy, right? And so you can go online right now and you can illegally stream just about anything that's out there right now. Whether it be a TV show or a movie or a video game. So it all exists, and that's clearly a problem in this new digital age. But that's a problem for almost any market today. It is the way of the internet. And then this allows for a more potentially saturated market. You get, with the ease of access of the internet and everything, this is something that just kind of happens. You get a more saturated market just with the potential for ease of access and having people the ability to view more. You have more people wanting to come get their stuff viewed, and lower prices, lower barrier of entry, that all helps as well. So. Ease of access, this is, going back to the internet and film fests and all that stuff. You've got a lot more exposure in today's world. And so we all know about Sundance. And so you've got major film fests that weren't as popular in previous years. And now suddenly they're another event, right? And these are big events that people go to. And so that just kind of allows for a lot more people to get their name out there, and for the indies that were struggling years ago to get noticed. So how do they do it? We talked a little bit about Marvel on the last slide, but Marvel really is the most perfect example for marketing movies. They have every potential tie-in you could ever want. They are absolute geniuses when it comes to marketing. Not only do they have all of these ridiculous marketing product tie-ins, right? So the t-shirts and the figurines and the cups and the, you name it, they've got it, right? Kids have school supplies with the Avengers on them. So they've got that, right? They've got the marketing tie-ins. They've got that wanna see, that have to see, right? They've figured that out. They've got that down to a science. They have their trailers down to a science. You watch that trailer and you get chills. And I don't know how they do it, but it is amazing, and I'd love to figure it out, exactly how they craft those trailers. But one of the things they've done is they didn't start out this great, right? They had some pretty bad, reviews pretty early on. So they've learned from their mistakes. So one of the things that they like to do is they like to do consumer research, market research. So they will go ahead and they'll do some sneak previews and they'll do some test screenings and they'll kind of gauge the market a little bit. And then they'll adjust course as necessary. So if you notice, you start getting like little tidbits from Marvel and from Disney and major companies like that. But you get the tidbits 2 years in advance, right? Like this movie is barely begun shooting, and it's suddenly like, oh, I'm getting a teaser, right? You've got maybe 2 shots. 2 scenes, shot at this point, and they've cut up like teeny little bit of the footage because it's like, oh, we're gonna give them like a 10-second like little teaser, and that's it. Like that starts it. It's like, oh man, it's happening, right? And it's like, oh, you've got a 2-year deadline ahead, but it doesn't matter because it's happening. It's happening, and then everybody forgets about it, and then suddenly 6 months later, you get another like piece of news from set, right? And so that's kind of really where things start to happen. It's a lot of word of mouth, and then they get that special hashtag, and it's like, oh man, hashtag Endgame, whatever. Everybody's got this social media buzz now. So there is that. Then there's these television commercials. So the Super Bowl, the NBA Finals, there's the Oscars, there's every, the NFL, the Super Bowl, and all those major things that you have on TV today, they have ads. YouTube, right? YouTube is now notorious for all their advertising. So you can put a movie trailer that you can't skip at the start of your YouTube video. Twitch is the same. Hulu, Netflix. Netflix is better about commercials. I don't think they have commercials. But Hulu does. You can pay for not having commercials or limited commercials. But again, most of the streaming sites have commercials of some sort. Newspaper, not as much, but it is still very popular. So there are a lot of different ways where you can get this networking and marketing across. But again, this social media, this internet, this is kind of the real big thing you want to utilize when you're going into the future. It's going more into the have to see, must see, want to see. And this is the consumer research stuff. So going out and asking the questions, making sure your target audience is correct is a big one. you might think that you're making a kids movie, but in reality, maybe some of the jokes are a little adult. Maybe it's stuff that maybe kids won't get. So really reaching out and making sure that that audience is correct, and test screening with that audience and making sure that it appeals to them and not an audience you're not trying to necessarily capture. Creating that trailer, right? So going and getting the feedback on your trailer, putting little tidbits together here and there, and seeing what the reactions are, sending out to small groups of people. What's the market? What is your marketing? Is it believable based on what you're selling? So I'm not going to market an action film for a romance film. There was an example of this recently. It was a World War II Great Britain reconstruction film. Maybe it was a World War I reconstruction film. It had some great actors and actresses in it, and they kind of displayed it as like a reconstruction romance. And it was not. It was this weird action mystery conspiracy film, and it was, I walked out of the trailer thinking this was going to be this, weird spy romance, cool Reconstruction era, awesome thing, and it fell flat for me, and it was just disappointing. So you want to make sure that what you're marketing and what you're putting out there is believable, and that you're not just trying to fool people into coming to see a movie that's not what they're going to get. And then the pace and the cadence of the movie. I don't want to laugh. I don't want to be laughing during the Titanic, dramatic Rose is on the door, right? The plank of wood. I'm not supposed to be laughing at that moment. So you want to make sure that the pace feels right, and that the audience is laughing when you want them to laugh, and crying when you want them to cry, and gasping for air, sitting in suspense when they're supposed to be. So some of the ways we can do this is sitting down with a focus group and doing some test screenings, getting people in a room, having them sign an NDA, and figuring out if this is right. Doing some interviews, doing some test surveys, sending out, research advice, reaching out to your target audience and asking them, very specific, detailed questions of, do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like this? Do you like your main character to be like this, or do you like him to be like this? And really getting feedback from the people that you've talked to previously. If getting feedback from people that have already tested your stuff, that have viewed your materials, and see what they like, what they don't like, and where you have standouts and where you have problems, and what they think you should fix. And, as always, take everything with a grain of salt. Not everybody's going to like everything you do, and everybody's going to have a difference of opinion. So get their opinion, see where they're at, and go from there. So movies versus video games, like we talked about pretty early on, there's a lot of similarities here. They're one of the markets that's the easiest to kind of go between. So producers are one of the most consistent things between the two. Each of the two markets, the industry for movies and video games, both have a producer role. And the producer roles are very, very similar for both. The main difference for movies versus video games is that in movies, the producers are responsible for a lot of the casting. They're kind of responsible for going out and finding the directors and finding, production staff and the cast and all that other types of stuff, for the casting directors. And so in video games, that's not necessarily the case. You typically already have like a core team put into place before you have a producer come in, or the producer is part of a publishing company, and so the producer is more providing oversight for the team that's in place. However, both of their jobs is, in essence, the same. It is to get the movie from start to finish, and to ship it on time, and to have it be successful. So they're the oversight. They're the person that is there making sure people are on set, that they're working, that they're meeting their deadlines, that people have what they need, that the publishers above are getting their needs met, I mean, they're the liaison. They're the doer essentially. So you have those roles on both ends, which is important. Target audience. Both need to meet a target audience. Every form of media has a target audience. You have somebody you want to reach. And so, again, both industries really just need to make sure that they're focusing properly on their target audience. Both have different levels of popularity. You have AAA video games and you have those high budget blockbuster movies. And both have indies. Both have independent, smaller groups making movies and video games. Pre-sales are something that is the same between both. You've got pre-sales for movie tickets and you've got pre-sales for video games. With pre-sales, you do have perks in both fields as well. So you get, special DLC for pre-sales in video games, and then you'll get maybe like a T-shirt or a special mug or cup or action figure, something like that, for pre-sales with movies. And then piracy. We talked about this earlier with the internet. There's going to be piracy. And so across the board, you're getting some level of piracy and illegal streaming and downloading on the internet. So some of the differences is the distribution methods. You've still got movies going into theaters and going out on DVDs and going into streaming networks online. And video games haven't quite gotten there yet. We talked about the planes, right? And so right now we've got some still pretty standard, typical distribution for video games, and it is moving in the direction of movies, but we haven't quite gotten there yet. So we're still very much in, you have a CD-ROM or a disc. You've got Steam, which is your main, quote unquote streaming method, right? But it's a digital download, same as like the PlayStation Store. PS Now, or the Plus subscription, that's going to be your closest thing to streaming right now, and then the new Google service is also going to be coming close to that. But that's the moving in the direction towards streaming, towards the Netflixes of gaming, but we're not quite there yet. So, and I believe maybe some of those headrests in planes might have some small games, but not on the level that they do movies and TV. So, we also have, so this is something that we do have, is we've got all of the handheld devices and the on-the-go that TV movies don't necessarily have. And with that, we do have some unique hardware that movies don't have. So that's cool. You had some portable DVD players and such back in the day, and now we've got our portable gaming devices like our the Wii and such. So that's a new distribution method that we have that they don't. Product placement. The big money maker in movies doesn't exist in video games. So you're not seeing Coca-Cola products, Pepsi products, anything like that sitting in a movie. Or in a video game, I mean. So that's a big one. And so there are companies out there that I know have looked into it, that have talked about it, and it's just not something that's been implemented. And so I am no way saying that we should be doing product placement in movies. However, it definitely, or in video games, it might be something that could be a moneymaker. Movie tie-ins. So you've got a lot of the sequels. You've got the Marvel Universe, the Disney Universe. So if anybody knows anything about the Disney Universe, there's like the little numbers that are in all the animated films, and you've got, people have the theories about the princesses all being related in some way, and you have a whole universe around a specific thing in MCU, right? You've got all these tie-ins. So you've got the theme parks, and you've got the merchandise, and you got the communities, and you have all of this other stuff. And gaming, again, we're getting there. We're looking at the Nintendo theme park and Universal, but Marvel has its entire part of the theme park. Star Wars has an entire part of the theme park. Avatar has an entire part of the theme park. So those are things we just kind of need to push, right? We need to push it a little bit more. Pip-Boy is a great example of a movie tie-in that is in video games. So yeah, that's kind of where we need to go. Is we need to kind of just tie stuff in a little bit more. Converging into other markets. So we've got ET up here and we've got Minecraft up here. So right now we have movies that move on and do other things. So the perfect example is ET moving to Atari. It was a major failure. It was almost ruined the game industry. It's historic and notorious. However, the movies have been consistently trying to innovate and move forward and try to converge into other markets. And so they will pick up and do films from everything, right? What was it? Rampage was just the movie that came out, and that's an old video game. So they're pulling source material from everything, from books, from movies that have been done in the past, to old TV shows, to books and music songs and fables and everything. And so that's not necessarily something we do in video games. A lot of it is original content, and so pulling stuff in from the outside might definitely be something to look at. Minecraft Story Mode was one of the big ones that has done it recently. It's huge. It was the Telltale, last big thing that Telltale did that shipped on Netflix. And so that's an interactive game on a television streaming service. And so that is a game that converged over into a television market. And so wanting to make sure that we've got more and more and more of those. Bandersnatch is kind of TV converging into gaming. And the two gaming coming together, but that could be another really good example, that Black Mirror. So that's the kind of stuff when we're talking about converging into other markets that we're talking about there. And then the award shows. We've got Independent Game Awards and the major game awards in the fall, and then the GDC awards in the spring, and then you have E3 in the summer. But none of that is like the Oscars, right? We don't have anything even on par, we don't have anything close. And so we don't have any real way for anybody to get exposure like that. And so if you think about the names in video games and names in movies, right? You know the names of your favorite directors. You know the names of your favorite actors. And in video games, the likelihood is you don't know the name of your favorite director, or maybe you have a favorite director whose name you know, right? You don't know the video game people. You don't know who's making your game. You don't know the producers. You don't know the lead designer. You have no idea. Half the time you don't even know the voice actors, right? In anime, you know the voice actors, but you don't know it in video games. It's a very different market. So having the ability to have an award ceremony where people are recognized, the sound engineers are recognized, the visual effects artists, okay, let's just put that out there. There should be an entire award ceremony for visual effects artists and artists in general, and the video game industry, especially today. So I just want to say that. However, yeah, there isn't anything like that. There are no award ceremonies for gamers that are anything remotely like the Oscars, and so that is a huge difference. So we're just going to start right there. Awards are something that we really need to figure out. If we want to be successful like the movie industry is, we need to figure out how to get the buzz of an award show, the kind of buzz an award show has. E3 is the biggest event of our year, the most publicized event for the public, and GDC is more private for an industry conference. And so those are really the only, GDC has an award ceremony, but that's closed off to the majority of the public. And E3 is more of an announcement, right? This is a hype. It's a hype thing, It's not really about awarding anybody or recognizing anybody per se. It's the only place where you actually learn names. So you'll see the people that run some of the companies or some of the big wigs in the industry, but those are faces, right? Those are the company faces. Those are the marketing reps. it's not anybody that puts in a lot of the actual work, right? It's the big wigs in the industry, and so having some sort of big award ceremony every year that really just goes back and recognizes the people that have put in a lot of work could be really helpful. Product placement. So what can we do? How can we put even minor bits of product placement in some of our games? And so looking at some of the popular games that we have today. So I'm going to go to Rocket League because it's probably one of the easiest to do for examples. In Rocket League, you could very easily have logos on the cars, just like you would in racing. You know, maybe put like a Monster Energy or a Red Bull Energy logo on one of the tops of the cars. You could put a logo on the ball. Put logos all on the sides of the arena. So those are really easy things that you can do that are product placement methods that work. In games, I think one of the things that makes product tie-ins a lot harder is you're moving. It's interactive, right? In movies, we can direct the attention for a viewer. And we have a lot more control over that. And in games, that's not necessarily the case. You can guide players. You have an element of control, but forcing a player to look at a Coke logo isn't working, right? That's never going to work unless you have a majorly story-based game that is all, you know, driven, right? And you very little choice on the player, which a lot of those games don't succeed very well. So I think Telltale was the most successful at that, and we see where they are now. And so really figuring out how to do product placement in games is going to be something that would have to be done extremely consciously and be very considerate and deliberate. However, when we look at indie games and we look at the future of indies, I think that is somewhere where product placement could be extremely beneficial as far as making sure that they've got the sponsorship and they've got the money and they're able to kind of get off the ground. You know, you get a good sponsorship from a good partner, and that could really just change it for you. So for distribution, like we said previously, we're getting there, right? We just kind of need to push the envelope a little bit more. The new Google streaming service could really change the game. And there are a lot of kinks that need to get worked out with that. Internet streaming it's difficult because not everybody's going to have the same level of internet. And streaming games online, it's hard enough to get the graphics to work on a good computer, let alone over a shitty internet connection. So as our world gets more advanced and our infrastructure gets better, it's going to be more accessible and easier to do. Until then, it is probably going to be a luxury for the better off in the world, like those with VR headsets and such, just because of the internet connection. You know, if you have some fiber optic cable, it's going to be a lot easier to get that to work as opposed to somebody living in a more rural area that doesn't have as much access to a direct plug-in and really great high-speed internet. So tie-ins, this is something that's already kind of happening and really moving along in the world right now. Let's just use Fortnite as an example. How many people do you see flossing? You know, like, I had no idea what it was for the longest time because I'm just not, you know, ingratiated into pop culture right now. And so I didn't get it. And so it's like, you know, it might not be a direct product, but it is enough of a pop culture thing right now, and that is something you have to buy, right? Like, you have to buy that $1, $5, whatever little dance move. And so it is a micro transaction. It is a product. It is something you have to purchase. And it is a tie-in, right? Everybody's doing it. Everybody is into it. And so everybody knows what it is. And it's something people are doing in real life, right? Kids are having dance-offs in the street. And it not only creates buzz and word of mouth, it also becomes something that, you can have games in the future that are just these, little dance moves, right? And so that creates a huge market for tie-ins. The Pip-Boy, clearly, right? Call of Duty, you've got options galore. You've got the customized consoles and the customized handhelds and all the custom everything, right? And so those are all tie-ins. The stuff we really need to work on is the Pip-Boys in the world, right? Pip-Boy was huge. And so that's the stuff that movies do well that games need to learn about. And how do we find the products that aren't directly related to the game? How do we find the things that you don't use in the game or aren't an in-game item necessarily, not a microtransaction, it's nothing that you utilize in the game. It is simply something that is a reference to the game. Action figures, t-shirts, coffee mugs, your backpacks, right? I'm sure if you go to an elementary or middle school right now, you're going to find that kid that is decked out in Marvel everything. He's got the t-shirt, the backpack, the lunchbox, the folders, the pencils, the pens, the everything, right? He has it all. And the almost certainty there is that that doesn't exist for any game. You might have a Call of Duty notebook cover, right? But you're not going to have all of the accessories. You're not going to have a lunchbox and a backpack and a t-shirt and. So looking at that, having the bedding and the dishes, you have to think about the littlest things that could be marketed and produced, from cutlery to bedding to school supplies and toothbrushes, right? Having a toothbrush with Captain Marvel on it is cool for kids, and so it's like those little things that we need to find opportunity in. And that is, again, converging into other markets here. How do we use these products? How do we tie this into another market? How do we expand and become bigger than ourselves? We're reaching a point where we're stagnating, and we're reaching a plateau in gaming right now. And we need to kind of branch out. We need to figure out how do we go further? What more can we do? How much more can we reach for? How much more is out there? And so I think that's where really utilizing the power of movies and what they've done and learning from that, I think that's where this really kind of comes in. So we've got a lot of these movies that have been made recently. We've got the Tomb Raider, we've got the Rampage, we've got the Ender's Game, not Ender's Game, what was the one? The video game movie that everybody loved that was made, where it had every single movie character ever in it, and he was kind of like in a virtual reality simulator. Name is escaping me, but that one. So those are all kind of like movie examples and converging into the other markets, and you got a lot of those tie-ins, and some of the product placements actually showed up in that one movie for games. So you got the World of Warcraft movie that came out. So this is a huge thing. This is stuff we really need to learn. We can take movies and make them into games, right? Like, there are opportunities here. There are a lot of opportunities. Having movie games, right? Tie-ins for movies. Games that it is something, I'm going to use the Westworld or the Fallout Shelter games, right? Those are small little mobile games that are easy to make, that are tie-ins for a video game. And so, or for the Fallout was for a video game, but the Westworld was a reskin of the Fallout Shelter that was for a TV show. And so those are small little games that get you hyped for something more. And so things like that, those little experiences, definitely go a long way. So, what have we got? What are the future? What does the future look like? Personally, my personal opinion is that when we look at games, we're looking at the future of movies. Games are an interactive form of the movies. We're already a competing industry. We already have the same type of target audience. A lot of the people that watch movies right now are the same people that are playing our video games. You know, you've got the males that are 18 to 25. And so that is a lot of our population, and those people are largely not going out to movie theaters. You know, look around, think about the people you know. How many guys your age go to the movies on a regular basis? They really don't. You know, they want to stay in and play video games. And so think about that, and think about, you know, how do we keep those guys in versus going out to the movies? And so that's kind of our goal as game developers. And I think, you know, Black Mirror Bandersnatch is a pretty good example of this. It's an interactive, immersive experience. It's not just a director takes you on the experience that they want you to have. It's you are creating your own. You have your world. You have choice and freedom to do what you want, and there's a structure around that. However, you have the ability to make it your own. And I think the beautiful thing about this is you have the freedom to do it when you want, where you want, as much as you want. You know, these are experiences that aren't just an hour and a half long or 3 hours long. You've got experience that can take hundreds of hours. And so you can play for an hour where you can play for 100 hours. And, you know, movies you can watch 100 times. Video games you can play 100 times for 100 hours and not get sick of. And so I think that's a huge thing, is if I watch Aladdin 100 times, I know every single word to Aladdin. I'm sick of Aladdin. I don't know that that's the case if I go play Red Dead 2. I think if I'm playing Red Dead 2 for 100 hours, there's still things I'm not going to know. I might be a little sick of it, but I think that there's still stuff I'm not going to necessarily know about the game. And so I think that's a really big one that we really just need to latch on to is figure out, like, how to really harness that immersive element of movies and make it interactive. You know, let's learn from Telltale, right? They already have a formula in place. Yeah, the QTEs were a little much, right? And maybe it was a little bit samey. So let's look at Bandersnatch. There's how many different unique endings that you can have, right? 5, 6, 7. So that is huge. And if we can look at doing that, if we can look at putting players in a situation where they have full range of movement and choice. David Cage games. Detroit Become Human. That was another amazing experience. It's like you're watching a movie where you have full choice. And that's a 10 to 30 hour experience that's fully replayable for another, you know, I'd probably say up to 100 hours of content, right? And it's not one you really want to pick up and put down, but there's definite stopping points. So it's easy enough to do. And you generally play from anywhere to 30 to 2 hours at a time. And so it is a movie. It is a consumable pieces of a movie. And if we can really figure out how to harness that power, I think it's I think we could really kill movies in the coming 50 years. So that is all that I have for today. We've got clearly a bunch to learn, and we can take a lot of these lessons from movies, but main points, you know, we've got that target audience. We want to make sure we're focusing on that. We got to make sure we're creating the buzz, right? The have to see, the marvels. We need to make sure that the word of mouth is there and that everybody wants to come and play this game. And a lot of that comes back to testing, to consumer market research and trailers and kind of building the entire culture around what we're making. So, and then really making it immersive and interactive and harnessing what already is good and great about movies and making it better. So All right, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much.